Beautiful Disaster 2012, Book 1, Chapter 6. In the Office. Ben walked over to the two of them. "I'm fine, but what the hell was that?" he asked while looking around. Doug shook his head. "I do not know, but it shot at me," he said after another moment or two. The three of them made their way up the staircase where the figure once stood. They came to a stop atop the stairs and found the halls were empty. "Wow, it's so quiet," said Shayne, and the three of them jumped suddenly as they heard a loud crash in the office. "Maybe not," said Ben, and Doug turned and pushed the office door open. He then looked back down the staircase into the grade 7 and 8 hallway. There was a loud moan, and the water began to rise a little higher. "Guys, we're not going back across the grade 7 and 8 hallway," said Doug, and both Ben and Shayne nodded with agreement. "Hello?" said Doug suddenly leaning into the office. There was no answer in reply, but Doug saw a dark figure pass by the window. On the door that was labeled Principal, Miss Zare. Doug turned around. "Shayne, you're a big guy. Help me out," said Doug, as he grabbed a broom for a weapon that leaned against the wall. Shayne and Doug then entered the office and moved toward Miss Zare's door. "Kick the door in, bud," said Doug, and there was a bang as Shayne kicked the door open, and the window shattered as it hit the ground. "Oh, geez," came a startled voice, and Doug threw the broom onto the floor. "What are you doing down here?" said Doug, as he stared at Miss Zare. Tobin sat on a staircase back up on the third floor. He was wondering where Doug went. He stood up and walked down the rather quiet hallway. Everyone was falling asleep as the sun was now set. Tobin entered the classroom, and the sound of snoring filled his ears. "Scott," he whispered, and a guy laying on the floor not too far away sat up. "What?" he replied, and Tobin motioned him to the hall. As Scott got to his feet, Taylor opened her eyes and saw Tobin and Scott. "Hey, Tobin, where's Doug?" she asked. And Tobin turned to her. "Don't know, Scott and I are going to check the second floor," said Tobin quietly. Taylor stood up. "I'm coming," she said, and Tobin nodded. "Okay, come on, guys," he said, and they left the room. You can't sit in here and wait for the end," said Doug firmly, and Miss Zare sat up in her desk. What do we do then?" asked Miss Zare, and Doug shrugged. "I have no idea. Someone caused this, though. I believe we have seen him," said Doug, and Miss Zare stopped him. "Wait, how can someone control a storm? That's sci-fi," she said, and Ben spoke up. "Well, we saw some sci-fi shit moments ago," said Doug loudly. "Language, Ben. Listen, guys, don't worry about me. Just wait it out," said Miss Zare. "By tomorrow morning, if we stay on the third floor, we'll all drown," said Doug. "Third floor, in the science complex, there is a door that says off limits. On the other side of that trap door is the roof. Use that," said Miss Zare, and Doug turned to Ben and Shayne. "Get out of here now. You're the hero, not me," said Miss Zare, and Ben, Shayne, and Doug turned out of the room. "Doug," called Miss Zare, and he appeared in the doorway. "Yeah," he said, and Miss Zare pointed at the door. "Close it, please," she said, and Doug reached over and closed the door on her. When he turned, water made its way toward Doug's feet, rushing past him and under the doors. Ben stared down the grade 7 and 8 hallway, which was almost completely underwater now. "We're not going that way, that's for sure," said Shayne, and then they heard the sound of shattering glass. When the three of them turned, they saw a dark figure with a reddish-blackish beam coming from the pole in his hands, practically gliding toward them. "Look out!" screamed a voice, and someone tackled the dark figure into a wall. Ben and Shayne looked up from the floor. Nick stood there, and the figure could be seen clearly now, his face still not visible since he wore a hood and a mask to hide his face. Nick turned from the figure to Shayne, Doug, and Ben, and he told them to stand up. The water continued along the floor slowly as it came from the 7 and 8 hallway. The dark figure moaned and crawled along the ground. The pole in which the reddish and blackish beams came out and slid along the ground and into the figure's hand as he stood up. End of chapter 6. To be continued in chapter 7.